Chapter 249, Battle Royale 2. Aaron. Oh. You know me? Standing on the spot where I used to be standing moments before, was Aaron. Theodora Academy's #1 ranked first year. Of course, I would. You're pretty famous. Taking a step back, I replied. It'd be strange for me to not know you. That makes sense. As if it was the most logical answer, Aaron crossed his arms and thoughtfully nodded his head. Looking around, he asked, but, you still haven't answered my question. Where are the other two? You're talking about Kevin and Jean? I shrugged my shoulders. Beats me. They are off doing their own thing. Even though I knew, why would I give him the answer? That was a stupid question to begin with. I see. Then I'll get rid of you first. Aaron's eyes coldly flashed. Disappearing from the spot he was standing, he reappeared a couple of inches away from me. Shaw. Slashing sideways, I could hear the faint sound of his dagger splitting the air apart. Cuck. Bending my knees slightly, I watched as his dagger pierced the area where my head used to be. Thump. Stomping on the floor, I pushed my body back. Cold sweat trickled down my forehead. That was close. After distancing myself from Aaron, I placed my hand on the sheath of my sword and glared in his direction. You're as good as I thought you were, Aaron said as he looked at me from the distance. You too. There was a reason why Aaron was the #1 ranked person in Theodora Academy. Experiencing his skills firsthand, I now understood just how strong he was. Furthermore, from the looks of it, he seemed to be taking me seriously unlike all of my other opponents before. Damn it. Unknowingly, my grip on the handle of the sword tightened. Shaw. Before I knew it, Aaron once again attacked me. Unlike before, I was more prepared and thus was able to dodge his attacks. Quack. Unfortunately, cuts still appeared on my body as Aaron's dagger tore my clothes and skin. He's done his research on me. The more Aaron attacked, the more difficult my situation became. He was leaving me no room to breathe. Like a machine, he attacked, and attacked. Because my rings needed half a second to make, and the Keiki style couldn't defend, I was truly in a stump. Slowly but surely, my injuries were starting to pile up as cuts appeared all over my body. Crap, I can't let this go on, I needed to create some distance. Gritting my teeth, I raised my head and directly stared at Aaron in the eyes. Slowly my pupils turned gray as I muttered inside of my mind. The one. Aaron instantly fell into a trance as his footsteps slowed down for a split second. Taking advantage of this opening, placing my hand on the sheath of my sword, a clicking sound resounded across the area. Click. Cock. Clank. Raising his dagger slightly, Aaron deflected my attack slightly as my sword changed direction and only ended up grazing his shoulder. A large cut appeared on his clothes as blood dripped on the ground. With a smile on his face, Aaron took a couple of steps back. So you're finally decided to use that skill. Touching his shoulders, his smile deepened. As expected. You're a tough opponent. Likewise. I calmly responded. I really thought I had him. Staring at Aaron in front of me, my brows knit tightly. By utilizing the one, and taking advantage of the small opening I created, I wanted to end the battle quickly, but from the looks of it, Aaron did not slack off in his research. Even though the one was a very strong skill, it had a severe flaw. If the opponent expected the skill and was not caught off guard, then the effect of the skill diminished. Furthermore, if my opponent's mentality was strong, the effect of the skill was reduced even more. From the looks of it, Aaron had found out the trick behind my skill after watching some of my clips online. What should I do? I was at a pretty severe disadvantage at the moment. Not only was Aaron extremely strong, but his fighting style, which was similar to Jin's, completely countered mine. This was probably the first time since arriving in this world that I faced an opponent as skilled as Aaron. Actually, something is not quite right about this situation. Staring at Aaron before me, a thought suddenly struck me. Was my meeting with Aaron truly a coincidence? A seed of suspicion couldn't help but bloom inside of my heart as I looked back at the previous events. The fact that he arrived right after I got rid of the 5 individuals was something suspicious in itself. Was he there before, or was it truly a coincidence? I wasn't sure. However, my suspicion further grew when I realized how familiar he was with my fighting style. Although there were some videos depicting how I fought online, from how he was able to counter a few of my combos, it looked like he had been spectating the fight that I had with the 5 people before. If it was like that. Shh! *T. A curse escaped from my lips. Turning around, I activated drifting steps and made a run for it. A horrible thought suddenly emerged inside of my mind as I ran for it. On the opposite direction of where the portal was. With the bodies of the individuals I took care of before near the portal, there was a high chance that an instructor would find something. Therefore, if Aaron was truly another culprit, my goal was to get him as far away from there as possible. If that portal activated, we'd be doomed. Where are you running? Following from behind me was Aaron. Completely ignoring him, my legs continued to run as fast as they could. Fortunately, with drifting steps at my disposal, the distance between Aaron and me increased with every step. Before long, I was able to get a fair distance away from him. Even so, I continued running. Something had seriously gone wrong with the plans. Somehow, the monolith had gotten wind of Kevin's snooping and put countermeasures beforehand. This was a serious problem since Kevin's situation might be even worse than mine. After running for a further kilometer, my feet stopped. This should be good enough for now. Turning my head and no longer seeing Aaron, I hid behind a tree. Taking out the red book, I carefully opened it. As I opened it, not once did I let my guard down. Aaron could show up at any time. Especially since he had very terrifying skill at his disposal. Dual Link. An ability that allowed him to switch places with a selected target. As long as he saw someone, he could directly swap places with them. Of course, there were limits to it, but just the concept alone was terrifying. If there was someone near me, Aaron could use that ability to directly teleport before me. I'd be screwed if that happened. Quick, 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 quick. Frantically flipping through the pages of the red book, I secretly prayed that everything was going to be okay. Please, don't let it be like I presumed. Clank. Clank. The sound of metal clashing reverberated across the area as Kevin swiftly dodged and parried the incoming attacks directed towards him from all sides.
Ha! Ha!
Fuck. Kevin cursed. His breathing was extremely rugged. Surrounding him from all sides were 8 individuals. From the way they cooperated with each other, it was obvious that they were familiar with each other. What's going on? Kevin wondered as he distanced himself from the 8 individuals. This was a trap. Originally, Kevin had thought that there were only 4 opponents he needed to take care of, but contrary to his expectations, there were 4 more lying in ambush. From the very start, they had expected his arrival. Clank. Clank. Deflecting 2 more attacks, Kevin took the offensive and counterattacked. Kevin slashed vertically. Raising his sword, his opponent tried to deflect the attack when suddenly Kevin's sword disappeared and reappeared on his right. Cook. Kevin's sword soon connected with his body and a small transparent shield appeared. KHHH. Right, left, and back. Right as Kevin got rid of one opponent, 3 more showed up. In one swift movement, Kevin slashed horizontally, deflecting 2 attacks. Unfortunately, one managed to land and hit him in the shoulder. Cock. Clank. Without giving Kevin enough time to breathe, 2 more attacks came from his right and left.
Shh.
*T. At this moment, it felt as though time had stopped for Kevin. Staring at the 2 attacks directed towards his head and chest, he knew he had to do something. Overdrive. He muttered. Instantly, the veins and his muscles become more prominent. His pupils dilated and the side of his eyes became bloodshot. Bam! Like a meteor, his body shot forward and attacked the 7 remaining opponents before him. Bam! Bam! Unlike before, he had the edge this time. His every strike was faster, more powerful, and more accurate. The tides were changing. Kevin was slowly gaining the upper hand. Shaw. Dodging another attack, Kevin stepped to the side and slashed vertically downwards. Immediately after he slashed, 2 opponents appeared and interlocked their weapons together to try to stop the attack. Unfortunately for them, Kevin was expecting this. Suddenly, the arm holding onto the sword bulged. His veins wigged uncontrollably. KHHHH. Gritting his teeth, Kevin forcefully twisted his sword, switching from a vertical slash to a horizontal slash. Right as the sword changed direction, Kevin planted his foot on the ground and did a 180 spin. Thud, thud. 2 bodies fell to the ground. Come on! I'm not done. Having now reduced the enemies to 5 opponents, Kevin regained some of his confidence back. For the next couple of minutes, Kevin relentlessly pushed back all of his opponents. On multiple occasions, small cuts appeared all over his opponents' bodies. Nevertheless, even though he was pushing them back, his injuries were still piling up. Even though he was consuming potions whilst fighting, the rate at which his injuries were appearing were much faster than their healing. To make matters worse, his opponent's coordination was simply too great. Only being one person, Kevin was at a severe disadvantage.
Ha. Ha.
Crap. I need to do something. In no time, like a battery that was about to run out of charge, Kevin's breathing became more and more rugged. He was running out of steam. The effects of overdrive were wearing off, and the side effects were starting to kick in. His movements were started to become more sloppy. His slashes were becoming more predictable. Clank. KHHH, damn it. Blocking another attack, Kevin gritted his teeth, decisively turned around. He judged that couldn't win. At least not in this state. Unfortunately, his opponents weren't just going to watch as he ran. Taking advantage of his state, their attacks became even fiercer. As though they no longer cared about their lives, their attacks revealed a lot of openings. Kevin wanted to take advantage of that, but not long after he started running, his feet stopped moving. He was too tired. His arms and legs refused to listen to him. Thus, clank. Not long after, a dull sound resounded across the area as a small protective shield appeared in front of Kevin. What followed that sound was another sound that caused the audiences who were watching the match to freeze on the spot as their blood turned cold. PFFFFF. As though time had frozen, Kevin looked down towards his body. Tilting his head, he looked at the sharp saber that had pierced through his heart. Fresh blood spilled on the ground, as Kevin continuously spat blood from his mouth. Hoo, hoo. The sound of Kevin's desperate breathing echoed around the dome and television screens. Within seconds, Kevin's legs became numb and he knelt. Thud. Falling face first on the ground, Kevin's heart stopped moving. On this day, Kevin Voss died. I am possible. My hands that were holding onto the book shook uncontrollably. My breathing quickened, my face paled, and my pupils dilated. Kevin died? Chapter 250, Battle Royale, 3. Hoo. Taking a deep breath and calming my emotions down, I took out a pen from my dimensional space. With Aaron following me, this was the only option I had at the moment. If I lead him to Kevin, things might worsen. Please work. Channeling my mana into my fingers, I decided to make some changes to the book. Unfortunately. Damn it. My grip on the book tightened. The changes that I had made to the book disappeared within 5 seconds. It became apparent to me that I was still too weak. Even though I could make changes to the future with the book, the changes were only proportional to the amount of mana I had. At this moment, my mana was only at the level of a rank. It was pitifully low. The only changes I could make were not something that could help Kevin. Calm down, I need to calm down. I repeated inside of my mind. Repeating the process a couple of more times, and once again failing miserably, my breathing started to get rough as panic started to set in. I have no choice. My teeth clenched tightly. I'm going to forcefully break through. Though I was breaking through a couple of days before I was supposed to, this was the only way I could save Kevin at the moment. As long as I broke through to rank, there might be a chance for me to change the future a little bit. Clenching my fists tightly, I took out a small pill from my dimensional space. I was saving this up for later, but... Throwing the pill in my mouth, I closed my eyes and waited for it to enter my system completely. The pill that I took was nothing really special, it had the ability to help one break through when they felt that they were near. Originally, I had planned on using this pill in about a week's time, but given the circumstances, I had no choice. This is probably gonna quack. Not even a second after I said that, an electric current ran down my body as all of my muscles spasmed uncontrollably. This was the consequence of forcefully breaking through. Immense pain followed by potential future repercussions. The reason for this was simple. Because my body was still not fully capable of withstanding the huge increase in power that would come from a rank increase, by forcefully breaking through I was putting my body under immense strain. If you put too much stuff inside of a box, the box will overflow. What I was doing was essentially the same thing. Stuffing my body with items, or in this case, energy. My current body was still not fully capable of withstanding the large amount of energy. Hence why the unbearable amount of pain. But I did not have time to think about those problems. My main priority right now was saving Kevin.
Ha.
Fortunately, the pain didn't last long. Within half a minute everything was already over. With my body splattered all over the floor, I took massive breaths as I forcefully pushed my body up. Please work. With trembling hands, I opened the book and once again tried to make changes. Making the opponent miss, making Kevin's attack land, making the opponent trip, I tried everything. Quack. Eventually, as if my soul was getting sucked out of my body, the book slowly changed. It's working. My eyes lit up. Slowly but surely the future was changing, but my joy did not last for long. Thud. Falling face first on the ground, Kevin's heart stopped moving. On this day, Kevin Voss died. What? Dead again? Dropping the book on the ground, I covered my face with body hands and ruffled my hair. Once again Kevin died. The only difference was that he had managed to stay alive for 8 more minutes. Damn it! A cruise escaped from my lips as my jaw clenched tightly. Was everything that I did useless? Was there really no way in saving Kevin? No. I firmly shook my head. Taking a mana replenishing potion from my dimensional space and swallowing it down, I stood up. I've broken through already. With my newfound strength, I should be able to. Shaw. Before I could finish my words, a cold metal object pierced through the air and aimed for my head. Fully on guard, ducking down, I managed to avoid the attack. Standing opposite of me was Aaron, who had caught up with me. Have you finally decided to face me head-on? Damn it, I don't have time for this. Exhaling, my muscles relaxed slightly. I'm definitely going to regret this, but... Lifting my head slightly, and glaring at Aaron that had finally caught up, I muttered underneath my breath. Monarch's indifference. After Aaron and Ren left, an instructor quickly arrived at the area they first engaged with each other, the area where 5 students lay on the ground passed out. This was all done by one student. Arriving at the location and staring at the 5 students on the ground, the instructor was shocked. He had in fact witnessed the whole fight from the very beginning. There were about 50 instructors on standby at the moment overlooking the entire dome. On their wrist was a watch where they could spectate some of the matches the students were having. The instructor saw Ren's whole match from the beginning to the end. It was a flawless performance. From first targeting the 2 strongest individuals before taking out the weaker 3. He had executed everything perfectly. All right, let's get this over with. Twisting his hand, magically, all of the students on the ground floated in the air. The instructor's feet abruptly paused. He suddenly noticed something. Walking over to a certain area, he tilted his head to the side. From where he was standing, he spotted a small metallic shine. Curious, he decided to look. What the? Arriving before the metallic shine was, the instructor froze. Squinting his eyes, he bent down and dug the ground. Not even a minute after he started digging the ground, the instructor took out a large metallic disc from the ground. Staring at the disc for a couple of seconds, the instructor's eyes opened widely as a curse escaped from his lips. Shh! *T. Tapping on his watch, the instructor flusteredly sent a message to the other instructors. Code red. We've got an emergency. Rustle. Rustle. The rustling sound of vegetation being pushed to the side echoed across the surroundings as 2 figures stood on opposite ends. Standing on one side was Ren's cold figure, whilst on the other side was Aaron. You shouldn't have let me caught up with you. Aaron playfully smiled. In response to Aaron's provocation, Ren's face remained indifferent as he coldly said. Move out of the way. Oh. Why should I? Ren did not respond. Placing his hand on the sheet of his sword, he started channeling his mana. Feeling the fluctuations coming from Ren's body, Aaron's face became serious. He soon disappeared. Sheeing. Just like before, Aaron reappeared right in front of Ren. Thrusting his dagger forward, he aimed for his throat. However, something totally unexpected happened. Staring at the incoming dagger, Ren stood still. He made no effort in dodging the attack at all. Placing his hand on the sheet of his sword, a clicking sound rang out. Click! What the? Right before the clicking sound rang out, the back of Aaron's hair stood to no end. Abruptly stopping his dagger right before Ren's throat, Aaron disappeared and reappeared a couple of meters back. At the exact moment he disappeared, a lightning-fast sword appeared in the area he was standing. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead as he stared at Ren with eyes filled with disbelief. Why you? Were you trying to kill yourself to get rid of me? Aaron said in a flustered manner. Had he not dodged at the last moment, he would have without a doubt have been eliminated. The same thing would have applied to Ren, who merely stood still and watched the dagger aim for his throat. No. Ren shook his head as he responded to Eren. Then why didn't you defend yourself from my attack? Because I knew that you were going to back out. Are you calling me a coward? Yes. Conversing with Eren, Ren secretly placed his hand on the sheath of his sword. Slowly, he was accumulating mana inside of his body. He was trying to buy time. Ha! A long sigh escaped from Eren's lips. To think that I'm being looked down upon. Covering his face with the palm of his hand, Eren's lips twisted upwards. You think I didn't know that you were gathering mana? Fwa! A majestic green hue suddenly shrouded Eren's body. Bending his body slightly, he glared in Ren's direction. Funnily, I've been doing the same thing. Let's see if you can hold out well. Eren suddenly slashed diagonally with both daggers. Hue up. Like a lightsaber, two majestic green energies erupted from Eren's daggers as they headed in Ren's direction. Cracka! Cracka! Staring at the incoming attack, Ren took a step to the right. Gripping on the handle of his sword, lightning crackled around him. Hoo! He then took a deep breath and apathetically stared at Eren. His body suddenly disappeared. The third movement of the Keiki-style void step. Shi-ying! Shi-ying! At the exact moment Ren's body disappeared, the two large energy slashes appeared on the spot he was standing, tearing everything apart. Two large deep scars appeared on the ground as everything within the vicinity of the attack tore apart. Unfortunately for Eren, Ren was not there. Wah, ha! Catching Eren by surprise, Ren directly appeared in front of him. He then thrust his sword forward and aimed for his heart. Spurt! Eren's eyes shot wide open as blood spilled on the ground. Quack! You dodged it. Ren coldly said as he looked at Eren. At the very last moment, right when his sword was about to pierce Eren's heart, he shifted his body left ever so slightly, saving himself. Caw! A pained scream escaped from Eren's mouth. Stomping his foot on the ground, he distanced himself from Ren.
Ha! Ha!
Thud! Appearing a couple of meters away from Ren, Eren gasped for breath as he knelt on the ground and touched his chest that was bleeding profusely. In the distance, Ren was not in a good state either, as a large cut that traced all the way from his right shoulder to his leg appeared. Blood trickled down his body. Because the third movement did not directly teleport a user but was actually a quick burst of speed, he was unable to dodge Eren's attack fully. He too suffered damage. Don't get in my way again. Staring at Eren's kneeling figure in the distance, Ren coldly said before slowly turning around and leaving. Under normal circumstances, Ren would have eliminated Eren, however. These weren't normal circumstances. He was under Monarch's indifference. His goal was to save Kevin. Anything other than that was a mere waste of time to him. The only reason he chose to engage with Eren was because he was obstructing his path. Furthermore, with him now injured, even if he consumed an advanced potion, it would take him at least an hour to fully heal. Thus, without looking back, Ren's disappeared into the distance. At the same time, inside of a private office. Crash! The heavy sound of a chair falling on the ground rang out in the office space as a beautiful woman stood up. Turning her head to the right, she stared at a young girl with orange-colored hair. Opening her mouth, her tone was very grave. Monica. I know. With her eyes glued to the television screen, Monica nodded her head. Her face was incomparably serious. I know, Donna. Monica bit her lower lip. We can no longer keep the fact that Ren is the inheritor of the Keiki style a secret. Why did H? Trying. Cutting Donna off was the sound of her smartwatch ringing. Turning her wrist slightly and staring at the notification on her screen, heavy tension descended in the room. "Let's go now. MHM. Similarly staring at the notification on her screen, Monica solemnly nodded her head. An emergency had occurred. Chapter 251, Battle Royale, 4. In a different area of the dome. Shi-ying. A black dagger pierced through the air in a lightning-fast manner. Quang. Colliding with the metal body of a rapier, a defeating sound rang out, creating hot embers that scattered out. At the same time, the dagger clashed with the body of the rapier. Appearing on the right side of Jean were two twin swords. Raising his left hand, Jean slashed with all of his power. Quang. Once again, a powerful sound rang out. The result of the clash ended up with one person getting pushed back. "Brother. He's strong," Nicholas muttered. Next to him was his sister, Erin. Lifting his sleeve, he wiped the blood that trickled down the edge of his lip. Turning his attention towards his sister, Nicholas asked, "Erin, are you injured?" "No." "Good. I'm afraid we have to go all out. We might lose if we don't." "I agree." In response to her brother's words, Erin nodded her head. Hot. Then, with her brother next to her, she charged forward. Their speed was not something anyone could follow with their naked eyes. Within seconds, they were already in front of Jean. Thrusting forward with her rapier, Nicholas accompanied her movements as he thrust his twin swords forward. Clang! This time, it was Jin's turn to be pushed back. The twins' attacks were meticulous and calculated. Alternating between each other, with no lag in their movements, they both aimed for the most vulnerable part of Jin's body. Be it heart, lungs, head, liver, they aimed for all of the important organs. To make matters worse, because of how synchronized their attacks were, to Jean, it felt as though he was facing three opponents at the same time. Slowly, cuts started appearing all over his body. For the next minute or so, Jean was slowly but surely being driven towards a corner. To the spectators, it looked as though he was about to lose. But... tisk. Jean suddenly clicked his tongue. Almost instantaneously, a tremendous hue wrapped around his daggers. Taking a step forward, his body suddenly melted into the darkness. Shi-ying. Appearing right in front of them, Jean thrust his daggers forward as he performed an odd combo. His first strike was a powerful strike that shot up like lightning, followed by consecutive strikes that could seemingly sever rivers. With each strike, the dagger's pattern became more and more eccentric. At one point, one of the daggers followed a path that was similar to that of a snake. Almost impossible to predict. Under the barrage of attacks, Erin and Nicholas both cooperated with each other and tried their best to defend themselves against Jin's weird attacks. However, they knew that they were once again at a disadvantage. Even though they were going all out, they were still losing. KHHH, Erin. Pushed back, Nicholas painfully groaned. Yes, brother. Let's use that. But... if we don't use it, we will lose. There is no point in saving it. Nicholas quickly cut her off. It became painfully obvious to him that they were about to lose. Their opponent was just too strong. Understood. Biting her lower lip, Erin nodded her head as she raised her rapier in the air. A blue light suddenly enveloped the area. Standing next to each other, the twins connected their weapons together. A powerful current of magic power rose up around their weapons, heating up everything in their vicinity. Now! Slashing down, a light enveloped the area. A majestic vertical blue beam shot in Jin's direction. Shi-ying. Tracing behind the beam was a beautiful light blue trail, Coldly staring at the incoming attack, Jin's brows knit together. Hoo. He then took a deep breath. Light eye. Mana conglomeration. Activating his skill, Light Eye, Jin's world suddenly slowed down. Looking at the approaching attack, he tightened the grip of his daggers as he channeled all of his mana towards them. Within seconds, the dagger dangerously glowed as all of Jin's mana flowed there. Taking a step forward, he slashed down with both daggers. He was trying to meet their attacks head-on. Bomb! Enveloping the area was a bright light that illuminated everything within the vicinity. It was soon followed by a thunderous explosion that rang throughout the whole dome. Almost all of the students present heard it. Dust and debris flew everywhere, hindering the spectators' sight. Who won? Everyone wondered as they eagerly anticipated for the dust to clear out. Then, within a minute, everyone finally got their answer. With both daggers in his hands, standing in the same position as before, was Jin. Though his clothes were a mess and cuts appeared all over his body, compared to the twins that were on the ground struggling to get up, Jin looked to be in a much better condition. He was the victor. Wee-I. Wee-I. Right, when Jin was about to finish off his opponents, the whole building turned red, and an ear-splitting sound echoed across the whole building. Attention to all students. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, the trials will now shut down. Please stop whatever you are doing and evacuate the premises. I repeat, please stop whatever you are doing and evacuate the premises. For those who are unable to leave, an instructor will quickly come to aid you. Damn it! Cursing out loud, Kevin bent his neck slightly as he dodged a sword attack. Raising his sword, he deflected two more attacks coming from his left and right. Kwang! Kwang! Whilst he was fighting, Kevin's eyes would look towards his right from time to time. Right where the portal disc was located. I was careless, damn it. It became painfully apparent to Kevin that someone had found out about his snooping. If not, they wouldn't have sent so many people in one area. They must have added additional support at the very last minute to get rid of anyone that was trying to stop their plans. Although Kevin had taken this option into consideration, given that he had done a thorough check of the surroundings, he only thought that there were 4 people within the area he had selected. But he was wrong. Using some sort of artifact, 4 more people hid around the area and waited for him to act. He had been too careless. Kwang! KHH. Groaning, Kevin took a step back and parried another attack. Stomping his foot on the ground, Kevin raised his sword and looked at his opponents. I need to cut down their number. It was an 8 versus 1 scenario. He was at a severe disadvantage in number. The only way he could have a shot at winning was by reducing their number. Everyone here was weaker than him. As long as he got rid of some of them, his situation would become much easier. Hew up. Right when Kevin was about to execute a special move, something strange happened. Quack! Out of nowhere, one of the individuals suddenly tripped. Though confused, Kevin took advantage of this situation and swiftly stabbed his sword towards his back. Quaang! Caught by surprise, the individual was unable to defend himself. Stabbing towards his back, a shield suddenly appeared on the student's body as he fell on the ground paralyzed. This all happened within a second, and it threw everyone off. Needless to say, Kevin took advantage of his opponent's confusion and once again attacked. Thrusting his sword forward, Kevin watched as his opponent flustered, while tried to block the attack. Unfortunately for him, it was a feint. Right when it was about to hit him, Kevin's sword magically reappeared by his throat. Quaang! His attack was once again blocked by the small protective shield that all students had. Nevertheless, his opponent was down.
Ha! Ha!
That's 2 down. A faint smile appeared on Kevin's lips. Still, the smile did not last for long once he realized that he still needed to get rid of 6 more opponents. Kevin wasn't conceited to the point that he didn't know that the only reason he had gotten rid of the 2 opponents was due to luck. Had his opponent not tripped, this would have never have happened. Guess I have no choice. Therefore, taking a step back and glaring at his opponents, Kevin prepared himself to go all out. Overed. Click. Disrupting the fight was a subtle yet powerful clicking sound. Kevin, who was struggling and was just about to use overdrive, abruptly stopped whatever he was doing. The edges of his lips curved upwards. You're here. Thud. Collapsing on the ground was one of the 6 remaining individuals. Behind him was Ren's cold figure. At. Caught by surprise, everyone turned to look at Ren. With cold and apathetic eyes, Ren merely glanced at everyone present before placing his hand on the handle of his sword. Crack-a! Lightning crackled in the air, and a white hue shrouded Ren's body. Taking advantage of the confusion, Ren attacked once again. The first movement of the keiki style, quick flash. Click! Yet again, another clicking sound rang out in the area, a beautiful blue line drew in the air. With a large thud, another student was eliminated, leaving behind only 4 more people. Thud. Ren, you. Opening his eyes wide, Kevin flusteredly looked at Ren. With a trembling hand, he pointed at Ren and shouted. Do you realize what you have done? With cameras broadcasting the event worldwide, the whole world had just found out that Ren was practicing the keiki style. He had just placed a massive target on his back for no reason whatsoever. Ignoring Kevin, Ren once again placed his hand on the handle of his sword. Click! Once again, the all too familiar clicking sound rang out in the area. Unfortunately, this time his opponents were prepared as 2 of the 4 opponents stood next to each other and blocked the attack. Quang! The sound of metal colliding rang out in the air. Staring at Ren, Kevin's grip on his sword tightened. Damn it, Ren, you better answer me after this is over. Clank! Turning around, Kevin easily parried the incoming attack. Only needing to deal with 2 opponents, Kevin's life was now much easier. In fact, now that Ren had joined him, he was a lot more relaxed. This became more apparent in the fight as Ren and Kevin were slowly but surely gaining the upper hand against their opponents. With no restraints on him, Ren dominated his opponents. His lightning-fast attacks were not something his opponents could easily parry. Slowly but surely, wounds were starting to appear all over the opponents' bodies. Within a minute, Ren would be able to get rid of his opponents. Do it! Just when Ren and Kevin were sure of their victory, something unexpected suddenly happened. Looking at each other simultaneously, all 4 of the remaining individuals took out a black pill from their mouths and swallowed it. Phew! Their auras suddenly skyrocketed as a small gust of wind swept the area. What's going on? Taking a step back, Kevin shouted. Demon pill. Ren softly muttered. Hearing Ren's remark, Kevin turned to look at him and asked. What's that? Sheeing. Unfortunately for him, right before Ren was about to respond, 2 of the 4 individuals attacked Ren whilst the other 2 attacked Kevin. Raising his sword, Kevin tried to deflect their attacks. Once his sword collided with his opponent's weapons, a dull metallic sound rang out in the area. Quang! Quang! Quack! Taking 2 steps back, Kevin let out a strange sound. Staring at the 2 opponents before him, Kevin's face became serious. They've gotten a lot stronger. Click. 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 Ren's situation was also not that great. Despite his repetitive lightning-fast attacks, his opponents were now able to block the attacks more easily. Of course, this only applied to just regular attacks. Once Ren used any of the movements, injuries would appear on the bodies of his opponents. Unfortunately, he couldn't use those moves often as they consumed a lot of mana. Kevin, the effects of the pill will only last for 1 minute. Play defensive. Ren calmly said as he dodged an attack coming from his opponent. Understood. Why you, how do you know? Overhearing the conversation, one of the students opened his eyes wide in shock. Turning attention towards his companions, he shouted. Mission failed, activate Plan B. Understood. All 4 of them shouted in unison. At once, the bodies of 3 of the 4 individuals radically changed. Red threads of mana appeared on their bodies as their eyes became bloodshot and their muscles enlarged. Go! One of the individuals roared. He then, along with his other 2 companies, shot towards Kevin and Ren. They were so fast that Ren and Kevin barely had time to react. Punching out, Kevin was pushed back a couple of steps. Ren was in a worse state. Compared to Kevin, he had 2 individuals attack him. BAAM. Coo. Crashing against a tree, a small groan escaped from Ren's mouth. Even though his face did not change upon impact, the pain was not something a loss of emotion could get rid of. Still. I'm fine. Within seconds Ren had already stood up. Though his legs were a bit shaky, he looked completely calm. Thank God. Kevin sighed in relief. Turning his attention back to the trio, Kevin closed his eyes. Overdrive. At the same time, Kevin muttered those words, an inexplicable power burst from Kevin's body as he charged forward. Because Ren was injured, Kevin wanted to take them all at the same time. Hot. Slashing down, initially, Kevin was at a disadvantage. However, as the seconds passed, his disadvantage became less and less apparent. In fact, the disadvantage slowly turned into an advantage as he was slowly gaining the upper hand. From the looks of it, his opponents were also in a similar state to his overdrive, but the length of time they could be in that state was much shorter than Kevin's. Thud. Before long, there was only one individual standing before Kevin.
Ha, ha.
Kevin's breathing was rough. But even so, a smile appeared on his face. He was close to winning. However, just as he was about to finish the last opponent, Kevin's ears perked up. Ka-ka-ka-ka-ka-ka, a crackling sound rang out in the distance. Stopping whatever he was doing, Kevin watched as black lightning covered a metal disc in the last student's hands. Ren, stop him. Staring at the student in the distance, Kevin opened his eyes widely. He's trying to break the core. He's trying to blow everything up. With his hand already on the grip of his sword, Ren channeled all of the remaining mana he had in his body. Right as Kevin's words fell, he disappeared from his spot. The third movement of the Keiki style void step. Click! Leaving behind a beautiful blue trail in the air, Ren appeared right before the student and thrust his sword into his throat. Caught by surprise, the student fell on the ground paralyzed. Unbothered by this, taking the disc on the ground, Ren looked at Kevin in the distance. It's too late. Chapter 252, Battle Royale, 5. Wee-I. Wee-I. The tumultuous sound of the sires rang inside of the dome. The whole facility turned red as emergency messages repeatedly echoed across the place. Please evacuate the premise, please evacuate the premise, please evacuate the premise. Crap. Ignoring the sirens and staring at the metal disc in Ren's hands that was shaking uncontrollably, Kevin's eyes interlocked with Ren's. Let's leave. Dropping the disc on the ground, Ren took a couple of steps back. Wait, what about them? Are we leaving without them? Kevin pointed towards the 8 individuals on the ground. Yes. Leave them. Rin coldly replied. But they are children. Turning around, Rin completely ignored Kevin. Hey, Rin, where are you going? Kevin shouted. Think about it, they could have been blackmailed by the monolith to do their bidding. What if they are innocent? Ren's footsteps halted. Turning around, he coldly looked at Kevin. They are not worth it. Boo. Before Kevin could reply, Ren had already left. Though vague, the meaning behind Ren's words was clear: let them die in the explosion. It was a cruel thing to say, but he was not wrong. With the impending explosion, trying to save the lives of others might result in his own death. Furthermore, these people were the ones that started everything. Regardless of the fact that they might have been blackmailed or not, they were the ones that caused everything. Trying to save them at the expense of his own personal safety was not worth it.
Ah.
A small sound escaped from Kevin's lips. Biting his lower lips, he lowered his head and clenched his fists tightly. He knew that Ren was right, but a part of him really wanted to save them. I'm sorry. Eventually, Kevin came up with a decision. Closing his eyes, he turned around. He knew that Ren was right. Had the circumstances been different, he would have helped them. But now that his life was on the line, he needed to worry about himself instead of the others. However, right as he was about to leave, an enchanting voice reached his ears. What's going on here? Kevin's eyes suddenly lit up. Miss Longburn, Miss Jeffrey. Kevin, what is going on here? Landing softly on the ground, Donna looked at Kevin. Besides Donna was Monica. Over there. Kevin pointed at the disc in the distance. Miss, can you do anything about this? Gazing towards the direction Kevin was pointing at, Donna's brows jumped up slightly. Feeling the fluctuations coming from the disc, Donna was taken aback. Her whole demeanor changed completely. Monica. I know. Give me a second. Having already spotted the disc beforehand, Monica solemnly nodded her head. Slowly walking towards the disc, Monica waved her hand over the disc. An orange hue enveloped the disc. Crack-a. 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 Levitating in front of Monica, black lightning crackled around the disc. Closing her eyes, Monica tried her best to suppress the impending explosion. To her dismay, however, she couldn't suppress the device. Gravely looking at Donna, she shook her head. I can't do anything about this. It's too late. Even you can't do anything about it? Donna's brows knit tightly. No, we need to evacuate quickly. We only have 5 minutes at most before the device explodes. Get as many students out as possible, and isolate this place. With the core cracked, the internal energies within the core were starting to run rampant. A tremendous amount of energy was slowly building up inside of the device. The energy accumulated would become so powerful that perhaps only an ranked hero could withstand such impact. Even so, they would suffer tremendous injuries. Donna and Monica understood this point, so the only thing they could do was get as many people out as possible. Understood. At Monica's suggestion, Donna nodded her head. The best possible solution was to get as many students to evacuate the premises and call all the ranked heroes present in the academy to create a shield around the dome to protect the surroundings from the impact. Only then would they contain the explosion. Kevin, get as far away from here as possible. Looking at Kevin, Donna shouted. Yes. Heeding Donna's advice, Kevin turned around and ran towards the exit. Monica, go help the students in need. Yes. Stomping her foot on the ground. Monica disappeared from her spot. Turning around, and looking in the direction where Kevin and Ren had run off, Donna disappeared as well. The corpses of the 8 students disappeared along with her. Shut down the broadcast. At the same time, inside of a fairly large room that was filled with large monitors, a powerful voice rang out. We can't. A flustered voice replied back. What do you mean you can't? The powerful voice shot back. We've got direct orders from the higher-ups to shut down the whole event. Do it now. Sir, I'm telling you we can't. The controls aren't functioning at all. Ta. 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 Repeatedly pressing on the keyboard in front of him, a young man shot back. Let me take a look. Shoving the young man to the side, a middle-aged man with a grayish beard leaned forward and pressed on a few buttons. He had just received an order from the higher-up to shut down the broadcast. Staring at the monitors in front of him depicting panicked students running away from the dome whilst professors helping the paralyzed one, it didn't take a genius to understand what was going on. Something terribly wrong had happened. Error, error, error. What the? Staring at the large red marks on the screen, the middle-aged man's brows shot up. Turning his head, he shouted. What's the situation for the other cameras? Sir, we've lost control. We can't do anything, sir. The control panel no longer works. Multiple panicked voices replied back. Every single camera had been taken over. Damn it! Cursing out loud, the middle-aged man smacked his hand on the table. What the hell is happening?
Ah!
A pained scream rang in the forest. Once the effects of monarch indifference ran out, a tremendous amount of pain engulfed my entire body. Especially from my chest area where a large gash appeared.
Ha! Ha!
Leaning against a rock, I took deep breaths. Taking out 2 potions from my dimensional space, I unscrewed the cap and quickly downed them. Caw. Throwing the 2 empty potions on the ground, slowly but surely, my wounds started to heal. My mana which had depleted to the bottom was also starting to fill. GHH. Gritting my teeth, I forced myself to continue running forward. With an explosion about to occur any minute now, the professors were now busy trying to get as many people out as possible. Regrettably, with there only being a limited number of them compared to the thousands of competitors, there were bound to be casualties. It was inevitable. Not wanting to be one of those casualties, activating drifting steps, I rushed with all my might towards the exit. It was a race against time. At the same time, a kilometer away from the exit. Cough, cough. Coughing, Aaron leaned against a tree. With his arm on his shoulder, he gritted his teeth. Bastard. Recalling the painful defeat that he had suffered not too long ago, Aaron clenched his jaw tightly. Those cold and emotionless eyes that treated him as though he was trash, caused anger to surge from within him. How dare you? He shouted. His humiliation deepened once Ren turned around without finishing him off when he could've. It was as though he was saying, "You're not worth my time." From Jean to Kevin and to now Ren. Aaron suffered loss, after loss, after loss. His fists clenched uncontrollably. To make matters worse, this all happened in front of the whole world. He had become the butt of all jokes. The oh-so-famous Aaron Rhinestone, reduced as nothing but a mere stepping stone for someone else. Damn it! I can't accept this. He smashed his fist against a nearby tree. Wee-I. Wee-I. With the glaring sound of the sirens ringing across the facility, turning his head, and looking into the distance, Aaron knew that he needed to get out fast. He could feel the fluctuations coming from the distance. Within half a minute, everything was going to blow up. Aaron's feet suddenly stopped. Looking towards the distance, Aaron suddenly spotted a familiar figure. At first, his face twisted savagely out of pure rage. But an idea suddenly struck him as a wicked smile replaced it. "Don't blame me for this, I'm just merely trying to survive." Channeling every ounce of mana left inside of his body, Aaron's eyes locked themselves onto the figure in the distance. "Thanks," he muttered before disappearing from his spot. "I'm almost there." Looking at the doors in the distance, gritting my teeth and summoning every last bit of mana I had, I increased my pace. Because I was low on mana, my speed was not that great. But it was enough for me to reach the exit. Next to me, I could see multiple students also slowly approaching the door. Staring at the nearing door gate in the distance, I could see a faint blue sphere in the distance. That was most likely the barrier the instructors had set up in order to contain the explosion. As long as I passed that barrier, I knew that I was going to be safe. Therefore, boom! I increased my pace even more. "Come on, I'm almost huh?" Right as I was about to exit the premises, to my horror, my body froze. Suddenly my vision turned dark, and I found myself in a completely different area. The exit, which was previously very close to me, was now extremely far. My body froze, and my mind blanked. Staring on the spot where I previously was standing, I could faintly see the outline of a youth in the distance. Squinting my eyes, I soon found out the identity of the youth. Aaron. With his lips twisted upwards, his eyes interlocked with mine. Turning around, he left the premise.
Ah.
A small sound escaped from my lips. Gazing at Aaron in the distance, I understood everything. Right when I was about to exit the building, Aaron must have used his special skill, Dual Link, to switch positions with me. Understanding my current predicament, I felt a myriad of emotions. Anger, rage, despair, fear, anxiety, and many other similar emotions. But it's too late. Staring at the exit in the distance, and feeling the terrifying aura not far from where I was standing, I knew that I didn't have enough time to make it back. I was simply too far. Just where did I go wrong? Thud. Helpless, I fell on my knees. Had I gotten rid of Aaron whilst under the influence of Monarch's indifference, none of this would have happened. But I knew best that blaming Monarch's indifference was useless. Under Monarch's indifference, aside from my goal, anything else didn't matter. So did Aaron. My goal was to save Kevin, not get rid of Aaron. This flaw ended up being a costly one. Taking out a small object from my dimensional space, a lost look appeared on my face. Do I really have no choice? Turning my head and looking towards one of the cameras in the distance, I softly muttered. If the cameras are working, I'm sorry everyone. Recalling my family, Kevin, and the others, my chest started to sting. Right, I guess I also couldn't keep my promise. Remembering the promise I had made with Amanda, a bitter smile appeared on my face. I truly regretted making the promise. Boom! At that exact moment, as if time slowed down, a huge explosion erupted, and a powerful shockwave shot outward, shaking the whole dome from its foundations. Staring at the blooming cloud of fire that was slowly making its way towards my direction, I could only mutter one word. Beautiful. Outside the dome. Boom! A thunderous explosion rang out, and terrifying energy that threatened to destroy everything in its path emerged from within the dome. Outside of the large dome building, a large blue translucent sphere appeared. Standing beside the sphere, many instructors placed their hands on it as they injected their mana inside of the barrier, trying to contain the explosion. PFFFFF. Quack. Caw. Once the explosion hit the barrier, it shook uncontrollably. The faces of many of the instructors standing outside of the sphere paled tremendously. Some of the weaker instructors even ended up passing out. Fortunately, with the aid of the more powerful professors, they were able to contain the explosion. Unfortunately, broadcasted on every television screen in the world, was the image of multiple students getting engulfed by the massive flames. Their despairing screams as they were engulfed by the massive flames echoed across every television screen in the human domain. At this point, many turned off their TV screens as they could no longer watch such scenes. But for those that kept watching, in particular, one specific angle stood out from the rest. It was the one where a student with jet black hair and blue eyes appeared. Muttering something to the camera, everyone watched as his figure slowly disappeared into the fire. His image was particularly striking because he had been the student that most people had been paying attention to throughout the whole tournament. He was the rising star of the tournament, the inheritor of the Keiki style, and the student that beat Eren cleanly. Under everyone's eyes, they watched as his body slowly disappeared inside of the flames. On this day, to the world, Rindover had died. Chapter 253, Rindover 1. Minutes before the explosion, outside of the dome. Jean, you're here. Kevin approached Jean. Looking left and right, he asked. Have perhaps you seen Rin anywhere? Staring at the large translucent barrier covering the dome, Jean shook his head. No. Strange. Kevin murmured. I thought he'd be here already since he left earlier than me. Having left before him, Kevin assumed that Rin had already left the dome. Perhaps he's already left the area? Though plausible, Kevin shook his head. Even if he chose to go back, he wouldn't have gotten far. Especially since Rin only left a minute before him. Most likely, he was still roaming around here somewhere or was with a professor. Hey, you two. Help out over here. Snapping Kevin out of his thoughts was a rough voice. Turning his head, Kevin spotted a professor in the distance. With one hand touching the blue barrier, using his right hand, the professor motioned him and Jean to go to him. Kevin immediately rushed to the professor. Jean silently followed from behind. How may I help you? How is your mana reserve? The professor asked. Half. Good, you? The professor turned his attention to Jean. Squinting his eyes for a second, Jean eventually responded. About the same. That's perfect. I need you both to channel your mana inside of the barrier. Channel our mana inside of the barrier? We need as many helping hands as possible. This is the only way we can contain the large explosion from affecting the civilians that have come today. The instructor's voice became serious. You understand how serious the situation is, right? If the explosion was not contained, many of the people that had come to attend the tournament would die. Especially since the majority couldn't defend themselves. Not everyone was a powerful hero. Understood. Kevin's back straightened. Convinced by the instructor's words, Kevin immediately placed his hand on the barrier and injected his mana into it. Jean did as well. By the side, taking out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, the instructor thought for a moment before asking. Want some? No, thank you. Taken aback for a second, Kevin refused. Even though smoking was not something that would affect his health as it did in the past, Kevin hated the smell. Many people had a different way to deal with anxieties. Although the instructor next to Kevin was trying to put on a brave front, Kevin knew that deep down he was scared. Perhaps the cigarette was the only way he could deal with the anxiety. You? He then turned to Jean. Guess you also don't want some, sucks for you. Grumbled the instructor. Flicking his fingers, the cigarette lit up. Puff. Smoke slowly rose in the air.
Ha!
Nothing beats a nice cigarette. What the? Staring at the smoke that was floating in the air, Kevin's brows suddenly knit. Turning his attention back to the instructor, he asked, "Why haven't they shut down the broadcast yet?" Displayed on the opposite building to him was a large monitor. On it, Kevin could see the images of some of the students desperately running away for their life. With a couple of students in their arms, Kevin could also see some professors rushing towards the entrance of the dome. "I'm also not Sue."
Hmm.
"Isn't that Ren?" murmured Kevin, cutting off the instructor mid-sentence. This angered the instructor a bit, but Kevin did not seem to care. Staring at the scene displayed on the screen in the distance, Kevin all of a sudden noticed something odd. Blinking a couple of times to comprehend the situation, his body suddenly froze. What? Opening his mouth, like a goldfish, Kevin's jaw moved up and down repeatedly. But no sound escaped from his mouth. What is he doing there? Wasn't he supposed to already be here? Didn't he already arrive? This must be an illusion. What is going on? For a short second, millions of thoughts ran through his mind. It was only after that he realized what was happening that he opened his mouth and screamed. Boom! Kevin's desperate voice was quickly drowned out by the large explosion that erupted within the dome. Taking his hand off the barrier, Kevin watched in despair as Ren's figure slowly disappeared within the flames. Next to him, Jean was also staring at the monitors in the distance. Because his face never changed, no one knew what he was feeling. But if someone looked closely, they'd see his fists clench tightly. So tightly that they were shaking. At the same time, inside of the locked private waiting room. What's Ren doing over there? Emma suddenly cried out in shock. On the screen opposite to her was Ren's figure staring into the camera. Falling on his knees, he mumbled something to the camera. Everyone in the room could see his face. It was without question Ren. Then, boom! A defeating explosion rang, and the whole room shook. Because they were quite far from the dome, the aftershocks of the explosion were so strong that the windows trembled uncontrollably. It was as though they were in the middle of an earthquake. Even so, no one cared. That was because their eyes were glued on the TV screen in front of them. Slowly, everyone in the room watched as Ren's body was enveloped by the thick and raging flames coming from the explosion. Staring at the scene for a short second, Melissa grit her teeth and turned her head to the side. She couldn't watch the scene any longer. Though her head was usually always clear, at this moment her mind was a mess. Many thoughts crossed her mind as she wondered. Did Ren just die? Despite her ability to comprehend the most complex problems in the world, for the first time in her life, Melissa found something she couldn't comprehend. Just hat? Emma too showed a similar reaction. Turning her head sideways, she also stopped herself from watching the TV screen. Covering her mouth with her hand, she tried to suppress her screams. Even then, as if her throat was dry, no words escaped from her mouth. On the other hand, unlike the other two, Amanda's eyes never left the screen. Out of the three, she was the only one that watched the whole thing from the beginning. Like a statue, her eyes remained fixed on the television screen. Amanda's mind was completely numb at this point. She couldn't comprehend, process, grasp what was happening. What had she just witnessed? Ren couldn't be dead, right? Breathing started to become more laborious for Amanda, and before she knew it, tears had already started falling by the side of her cheeks. Opening her mouth, in an almost inaudible voice, Amanda hoarsely muttered, "Liar."
No!
Inside of a relatively large apartment, a high-pitched scream rang out. "Ren! Staring at the TV screen in front of her, like a crazed person, Samantha Dover, Ren's mother, grabbed the TV screen and shouted. "No, not my son. Anyone but my son. Give me my son back. Give him back to me." Screaming, tears had already started falling by the side of her face. "Mama?" Being only 2 years old, Nola couldn't comprehend a lot. But even then, seeing the state her mother was in, Nola understood that something wasn't right. Slowly she too started to cry. "Mama."
What?
Blankly sitting on a sofa opposite to them, bearing a striking resemblance to Ren, was Ronald Dover, his father. He wasn't a man of many words, but that didn't mean that he didn't love his family. No. In fact, he loved his family tremendously. The only reason he was still working at a rundown guild that was filled with debt was because of his family. But Ren, staring at his wife and daughter crying in front of the TV screen before him, tears started streaming down his cheeks. Immense guilt washed over him. He had so many regrets. If only I had been a better father. He only had one wish. "Son, my son. I'm so sorry, I hope you have a better father in your next life." 14 hours later. Clank! Donna barged into the room by flinging the door open. Inside of a room filled with monitors, she met a familiar face. "Good morning, Donna." Surveillance Department Head, Jonathan Morrison. They were reunited after last seeing each other during their academy days. Without saying any greetings, Donna approached one of the monitors. Displayed on it were Ren's last moments. When she saw Ren getting engulfed by the flames, she clenched her teeth. The one student that she had been privately training for the past few months, and had gotten close with. "Do you have any ideas how he got into such situation?" Donna asked. She was trying to maintain her composure throughout the entire time. "Not yet. There's a lot of angles that we have to look through. The dome was large. There were over 1,000 students as well. It would take a couple of days to understand what had happened. Especially since the cameras tended to switch." "This was the monolith, wasn't it?" "Most likely." Donna apathetically responded. Having captured 8 of the people involved, Donna was prepared to get an answer. Although all signs pointed towards the monolith, there were no clear indications that it was them. That was because all of the parties involved that were caught had no trace of demonic energy within their system. Even so, that did not apply to the 4 of the 8 students she had caught. Though faint, there were traces of demonic energy in their bodies. What she was wondering was now, how were they able to get in? Typically, if any sign of demonic energy was detected, the security system would quickly find it and alert them. This time, it didn't work. Was it a flaw of the system, or was there something new at play? "Is he someone you know?" Snapping Donna out of her thoughts was Jonathan's voice. Having observed Donna for the past minute, he could Donna's eyes repeatedly moving towards a certain screen. "He was my student," Donna said after struggling to find the right words. Her eyes reddened slightly. "I see, I'll try my best to let you know in a couple of days." Jonathan sighed softly. Never had he seen Donna, who used to shine so brightly in this state before. He must have been an exceptional student. "I'll let you know if I can find anything." "Thank you."